Before we get started today, I just want to mention that this episode probably contains some profanity. I've not really decided yet if I want to bleep it all out or whether I'm going to leave it in for effect. Who knows? Keep watching if you're okay with that. Well, on April the 26th, 1968, a 19-year-old man whose name was Paul Cohen walked into the Los Angeles County Courthouse to testify in a case for a friend. This, in and of itself, not particularly noteworthy, so why would Mr. Cohen have his name stenciled into the history books? Well, this was because of something that was actually stenciled on his jacket. The words, "Fuck the draft, stop the war." The use of arguably the most versatile of all swear words here irked a police officer who quietly asked the judge if it was possible to arrest Cohen for contempt of court. When he was told that it was not, he took the matter into his own hands anyway and arrested Cohen when he left the courthouse. What was the charge here? Well, ironically, that would be disturbing the peace. Ironic, of course, because he was advocating for peace in a peaceful manner. Cohen was later sentenced to 30 days in jail. Naturally, he wasn't particularly happy about this, and thus he appealed the decision. The case would ultimately go all the way to the Supreme Court, with their ruling in the landmark case of Cohen and California handed down today in history. That's June the 7th. But 1971. Recognizing the precedent that could be set if the case was allowed to stand versus being overturned, the American Civil Liberties Union quickly agreed to defend Cohen, getting University of California professor of law Melville Nimmer, one of the foremost experts on the First Amendment in the country, to defend him. Humorously, one of Nimmer's key tactics when defending Cohen in court was to use the word fuck as much as possible at every stage of the game in order to weaken the argument that the word was inherently offensive. On that note, when Nimmer first appeared in front of the Supreme Court, Chief Justice Warren Burger, in an attempt to stop Nimmer from saying fuck in the most hallowed of courtrooms, explicitly instructed him, "Counsel, we are familiar with the facts of this case. You can dispense with them and move directly to your legal argument." Instead, Nimmer replied, "Of course, Your Honor. Suffice it to say that my client was convicted of disturbing the peace for wearing a jacket in public, bearing the words, 'fuck the draft.'" This, and his continued frequent use of the word, ultimately saw some of the justices more than a little irritated at him, with said justices themselves choosing to use euphemisms. As for Burger, he went with calling it the "screw the draft case," and otherwise referred to the offending expletive as "that word," rather than saying it directly. Professor of law Christopher M. Fairman would later write of Nimmer's choice here, "Nimmer was convinced that he had to use fuck and not some euphemism in his oral argument. If Nimmer had acquiesced to Burger's word taboo, he would have conceded that there were places where fuck shouldn't be said, like the sanctified courthouse. And if that was the case, it would have definitely been lost." As to his actual legal argument, Nimmer stated that stenciling on the jacket fell under the umbrella of free speech, and as such was protected by the Constitution. He then pointed out, amongst other things, that in contrast to the charge of disturbing the peace, no known direct offense via members of the public was caused by the jacket itself, and that people could easily look away if they didn't like what that jacket said. Nimmer also noted that the wording of the statement did not target any particular group nor incite any particular violence. Further, as for Cohen, there is no record of him saying or doing anything at all other than calmly walking when he was arrested for the disturbing of the peace. In the end, after over 3 years of legal wrangling leading up to the Supreme Court hearing the case, they ultimately agreed with Nimmer in a 5-4 decision, finally settling the case of Cohen in California and enshrining into US law the right of the public to use the word fuck even in a public courtroom, as well as more significantly, helping to clarify elements of the First Amendment. The majority opinion in this case was written by Justice John Marshall Harlan, an essay that would later be called by Professor Yale Camisar one of the best ever penned on the subject of freedom of expression. Humorously, the essay deftly avoided ever using the word fuck, apparently in no small part because of pressure from Justice Burger, who is quoted as having said to Justice Harlan, "John, you're not going to use that word in delivering the opinion, are you? It would be the end of the court if you use it, John." Alright, so now you might be wondering, well, what exactly did he then say here? Well, in part, this case may seem at first blush too inconsequential to find its way into our books, but the issue that it presents is of no small constitutional significance. The constitutional right of freedom of expression is powerful medicine in a society as diverse and populous as ours. It is designed and intended to remove governmental restraints from the arena of public discussion, putting the decision as to what views shall be voiced largely into the hands of each of us, in the hope that use of such freedom will ultimately produce a more capable citizenry and a more perfect polity. To many, the immediate consequence of this freedom may often appear to be only verbal tumult, discord, and even offensive utterance. These are, however, within established limits, in truth necessary side effects of the broader enduring values which the process of open debate permits us to achieve. That the air may at times seem filled with verbal cacophony is, in this sense, not a sign of weakness, but of strength. Surely the state has no right to cleanse public debate to the point where it is grammatically palatable to the most squeamish among us, yet no readily ascertainable general principle exists for stopping short of that result were we to affirm the judgment. For while the particular four-letter word being litigated here is perhaps more distasteful than most others of its genre, it is nevertheless often true that one man's vulgarity is another's lyric. Finally, and in the same vein, we cannot indulge the facile assumption that one can forbid particular words without also running a substantial risk of suppressing ideas in the process. Indeed, governments might soon seize upon the censorship of particular words as a convenient guise for banning the expression of unpopular views. It is, in sum, our judgment that, absent a more particularized and compelling reason for its actions, the state may not, consistently with the First and 14th Amendments, make the simple public display here involved of this single four-letter expletive a criminal offense. Amusingly, one of the first things Cohen did after the case ended was to return to the county court and talk to the judge who had originally sentenced him. Of this meeting, Cohen stated, "I could tell the judge was upset with the Supreme Court's ruling in my favor. I probably angered him even more when I asked for my jacket back." Unfortunately for Cohen, someone had mysteriously misplaced the jacket during the case, so it was never returned. Cohen would later sum up his own opinion on the outcome of the case, stating, "I spent years thinking about whether the decision was correct. I wasn't a person who used a lot of profanity, and I didn't think women and children should have to see that language on the jacket. I didn't want to be known as contributing to what President Ronald Reagan, whom I admired, called the filthy speech movement. I mean, there were children in that courthouse. However, I came to the conclusion that I agreed with the decision simply because the government shouldn't be able to decide what speech an individual can or cannot speak. That would be quite a slippery slope." Given his position on profanity, you might at this point be wondering how he came to wearing the offending jacket in the first place. Cohen states of this, "I had a PhD in partying back in those days." Indeed, a girl he had met at a party the night before had simply stenciled the words onto his jacket when he was drunk. He stated, "I didn't even see the wording on the jacket until the morning before I was headed to court to testify on behalf of an acquaintance. I was, and am, a patriotic person." So that's another video in our Today in History series. I hope you're enjoying it. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Any improvements, feedback, yada yada yada. Let me know. If you did like it, give us a thumbs up. If you liked it a lot, why not subscribe? New videos like this every day, as well as all of our regular content. This isn't instead of it, it's in addition. Really hope you're digging it. And as always, thank you for watching.